What's going on, people? It's your boy Huncho, and this is a breakdown into the UK's most biggest and in-depth police investigation in the history of British policing. I present Operation Venetic.
The National Crime Agency, working with police forces up and down the country and our law enforcement partners, have led a large-scale operation which has dealt a hammer blow to organised criminals operating across the United Kingdom. Together, we have made hundreds of arrests. We have smashed criminal networks, and we have gone after the ringleaders, the masterminds, and those who thought they were beyond and above the law. This operation has coordinated the seizure of huge quantities of drugs, a large number of lethal firearms, including automatic weapons and explosives, and we have recovered a vast quantity of criminal cash. This operation shows that we can go after organised criminals no matter where they try and hide, and we will continue to target those that profit from the misery of others.
Now, before we break the operation down, we need to do a little bit of a timeline jump so it becomes clear for you guys. In 1991, a man by the name of Phil Zimmerman created Pretty Good Privacy, or for short PGP, which was a way to encrypt messages to send to people, and for years it was the closest thing to military-grade encryption. Now, it gets a bit confusing to explain the process of how this works, but basically, users have a public key and a private key. Senders use the former to encrypt messages, which can only be decoded by someone who has access to the information. And if that didn't make sense, in a nutshell, it's a way to communicate privately without anyone being able to intercept the information, and you can only access it if you have a key, hence why a lot of criminals use this method to communicate with each other. So fast forward to the 2010s and we see dark web users using this kind of encryption to keep themselves quote-unquote anonymous on the internet, but of course PGP is used for a wide range of things. So after finding breaches in the PGP system, with the most popular service at the time being BlackBerry's PGP system being hacked by law enforcement, and of course encryption technology advancing, a Dutch company would rise in popularity called EncroChat. So how would you get your hands on an EncroChat phone? Well, you couldn't buy one online, you had to leave your contact details and a representative would get in contact with you. The device itself would cost around £900 and you would get a 6-month contract for a further £1,500. Now, according to their website, the phone offers a wide range of things, but some key ones that you need to keep in mind are that they guarantee anonymity, which meant there was no way to associate the device or SIM card to the customer account. They offered EncroChat messaging protocol, which they described as the electronic equivalent of a regular conversation between two people in an empty room. They offered something called panic wipe, which meant that from screen lock, a user can type in a PIN and instantly wipe all data off the device. They also offered self-destructing messages, which meant you could put a timer on a message you sent to someone and it would delete on the other person's device depending on how long you set the timer for. And they also had something called industry-leading hardware, which meant that basically they removed the camera, microphone, GPS and USB data port. So you might ask yourself, well, how do you make a phone call off a device such as this? And to that, they had preloaded apps on there for instant messaging, which gave you the ability to make VoIP calls. And for you guys who don't know what that means, it's basically technology which converts your voice into a digital signal, allowing you to make calls directly from a computer. So EncroChat priding themselves on being the top dog when it comes to encryption, with them stating that their methods wouldn't be breachable. How does it then become breachable and become the centre of a European-wide police operation? And how does it become the centre of the UK's biggest policing operation to date? Well, in 2017, French authorities started to investigate the company after phones sold by them were found as part of separate criminal investigations. Authorities have said to have penetrated the company's servers in northern France and put a technical device in place in around March of 2020 to go beyond the encryption technique, which would grant them access to users' correspondence. So of course, the French authorities, alongside Europol and other policing agencies all across Europe, which included the NCA or National Crime Agency, and in turn the Metropolitan Police, and in turn other police forces across the country, would set up their own individual operations, with the UK labelling their operation as Operation Venetic. Throughout Throughout the operations, police gained access to over 20 million encrypted messages which prevented assassinations, abductions, shootings, murders, robberies, extortions, assaults, and hostage taking. They were able to intercept dozens of international drug shipments, dismantled many drug labs, and stopped money laundering operations. They also gained access to tens of thousands of images sent by users of EncroChat. On June the 13th, the company had sent out a message to all users that read, "Today, we had our domain seized illegally by government entities. They repurposed our domain to launch an attack to compromise carbon units. With control of our domain, they managed to launch a malware campaign against the carbon to weaken its security. Due to the level of sophistication of the attack and the malware code, we can no longer guarantee the security of your device. We took immediate action on our network by disabling connectivity to combat the attack. You are advised to power off and physically dispose of your device immediately. Period of compromise was about 30 minutes, and the best we can ascertain was about 50% of the carbon devices in Europe due to the update schedule. The malware that was being used by policing authorities meant that it could potentially read the messages written and stored on the device before they were encrypted and sent over the internet. One of the phone models that was widely used by EncroChat was BQ Aquarius X2, an Android phone owned by a Spanish electronics company that Encro would install the encryption software onto. In May of 2020, some users of this model noticed a problem, that the wipe feature that EncroChat prided themselves on had stopped working, with an associate coming out to tell reporters after the operations that at the time they believed that either the user had forgotten their reset PIN number or that the wipe feature wasn't configured properly, which was nothing to be alarmed about because users can make mistakes. Encro employees tracked down one of the phones that was affected by the problem, and you guessed it, it wasn't a user problem, it was malware found on the phone, and they then come to the realization that all users having this problem had their phones hacked. So if you didn't guess it by now, in March of 2020, police had successfully breached EncroChat via malware that was created for the X2 model, and it's believed that around April 1st, they had begun to collect data. On top of disrupting the wipe feature, the malware was also designed to conceal itself from detection, record the screen lock password, and clone application data. After realizing it was a malware attack, of course at this point they didn't realize it was the police. Over the 2 days that followed, EncroChat pushed an update to its X2 models to restore the phone's features and gather information about the malware installed on its devices around the world, adding that the update was put in place so that the company could keep an eye on the devices without having to physically have it in their own hands. But almost immediately after the patch, the police struck again, and this time it was harder than before. This time they could change the lock screen password rather than record it, and things had started to escalate. The company then went into full emergency mode and of course sent out that message on June the 13th that they had a breach, but by this point police had been gathering data for months, and all policing agencies involved had access to over 20 million encrypted messages that had been sent by users, and they had access to tens of thousands of images. So with over 10,000 users of the 60,000 that were using EncroChat being British nationals, it was now time for UK police forces across the country to start acting out upon the information that they have got their hands on.
Warp strike.
The National Crime Agency, who had been working on hacking into EncroChat alongside other policing officials across Europe, had said that this operation was the equivalent of breaking the Nazis' Second World War Enigma code, and that dozens of crime groups have now been dismantled in the UK. And going into more detail about the hack, officials would say that police were able to watch criminals plot their every move as they used EncroChat, gathering real-time clues. And because they've collected enough evidence, they can now put them behind bars, and it's now been revealed that police across the country have captured 746 criminals ranging from mid-tier to kingpins. In the series of raids across the country led by the National Crime Agency, regional organised crime units and various different police forces across the UK, they seized £54 million in cash, 77 27 firearms, which included AK-47s, multiple submachine guns, 4 grenades, and 1,800 rounds of ammunition. A carbine converter was also seized. 2 tons of Class A and Class B drugs had also been seized by police, which included 28 million etizolam pills, which are known on the streets as street Valium. 55 high-value cars and 73 expensive watches were also seized by police. On top of all this being seized, police had dealt with more than 200 threats to life that had prevented murders between rival gangs, just as we previously spoken about. In more depth though, these threats to life included plots to remove limbs, stage acid attacks, carry out kidnappings, and to assassinate people via shootings as part of ongoing turf wars around the UK. NCA Director of Investigations Nikki Holland said she had seen messages that had quote-unquote chilled her to the bone as drug kingpins discussed ways they wanted to torture and kill their rivals. She went on to say this was criminals talking about how they were going to see off their competition. They range from the removal of limbs through to acid attacks and shootings. It wasn't a case of going and shooting someone. Some of them wanted to do really incredible things to them before getting to that point. She would also go on to describe how the NCA had disrupted a drug supply chain into Britain from South America, and where a cruise liner was being used to ferry in drugs. Going on to say that 3 people were arrested on drug smuggling charges, and one of them which included someone who actually worked for the ferry liner. Although only 746 criminals had been arrested, she went on to say that this was the tip of the iceberg. She said that the NCA, alongside other British law enforcement, are looking to round up all 10,000 British users of the EncroChat. Going on to say that the criminal underworld is now running scared as more arrests are soon to follow, and she revealed that some recent messages from EncroChat users read, "This year, the police are winning. NCA, as you well know, are sophisticated and relentless. If NCA, then we have a big problem, and the police are having a field day." The Metropolitan Police have come out to say that this is the most significant operation the Metropolitan Police Service have ever launched against serious and organised crime, and they went on to say those arrested under one investigation were identified as being part of a most high-harm OCN in London with long-standing links to violent crime and the importation of Class A drugs. Adding, the central figures of this group led lavish lifestyles, live in multi-million-pound properties with access to top-of-the-range vehicles. They appear to be successful, respectable business people, but they are dangerous individuals. Our enforcement activity against them reflects this. We used our most highly trained firearms officers and sophisticated tactics to arrest them at their addresses. In an investigation carried out by the NCA and Scotland Yard, it showed that there were links between international organised crime groups and serious violence across London. It focused on an organised crime gang spanning the UK, Europe and the United Arab Emirates, involving the importation and distribution of cocaine and firearms. In June, detectives identified a plan by this organised crime gang to shoot and kill a member of a rival group. Their investigation meant that they were able to take action to prevent this. An individual was arrested for conspiracy to murder, and a loaded pistol was also seized from an associated search of an address. Miss Holland, NCA's Director of Investigations, revealed that some law enforcement officers had also been arrested, suspected of corruptly helping criminal gangs, and she confirmed that no senior officers were involved, but refused to draw further on details. In reference to the investigation, she added that they had worried in April that the coronavirus pandemic would disrupt the police operations, but she said it actually worked to their advantage as more people were home when arrests were made. She would go on to say, "This is the biggest and most significant law enforcement operation of its kind in the UK, and it's previously unmatched in terms of scale. We've dismantled well-established organised crime groups and have already secured evidence to prosecute a significant number of known criminals that previously remained beyond our search. The infiltration of this command and control communication platform for the UK's criminal marketplace is like having an inside person in every top organised crime group in the country. This is the broadest and deepest ever UK operation into serious organised crime. This is just the start of the operation, and it will be going on for a long time yet. I'd say to any criminal who uses an encrypted phone, you should be very, very worried." The NCA is proud to have led the UK part of this operation, working in partnership with policing and other agencies. The results have been outstanding, but this is just the start. A dedicated team of over 500 NCA officers has been working on Operation Venetic night and day, and thousands more across policing, and it's all been made possible because of the superb work of our international partners. Together we have protected the public by arresting middle-tier criminals and the kingpins, the so-called iconic untouchables who have evaded law enforcement for years, and we now have the evidence to prosecute them. So it's being revealed that the Crown Prosecution Service is now leading in all the Operation Venetic prosecutions, and it's understood that this international drugs bust is more significant than when Ross Ulbricht, or as some of you may know him as Dread Pirate Roberts, leader of Silk Road, was arrested and in turn the website being shut down. And it's also now understood that international investigators are going after the team who ran EncroChat, and they said that they led luxury lifestyles, although the technology itself is not illegal. And that is the breakdown into the UK's biggest and most in-depth police investigation to date. Of course, there's more updates come out about this, about big key players that were involved in this operation. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated, but let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. Give the video a little like, and if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Ape Huncho, and I'm out. Hey everybody, Ape Huncho here. Today we'll be taking a look into the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, or outlaw MCs, and how, although yes, a culture that started in America in the 1900s, travelled all the way to the United Kingdom and have since had chapters open here to become established outlaw motorcycle clubs. After motorcycle clubs started in the early 1900s, outlaw MCs, not to be confused with the outlaw motorcycle club, would start to emerge in the decades to come. Now when we talk about an outlaw MC, you might be scratching your head asking yourself what the difference is, and well, by definition an outlaw MC from the club's perspective is because the club isn't sanctioned by the American Motorcyclist Association, not necessarily because they engage in criminal activity, but of course it has been well documented that outlaw MCs have been linked to the criminal underworld, and even here in the UK it's said that some outlaw motorcycle clubs are even linked with the likes of the IRA and Mexican drug cartels. The US Department of Justice even goes on to define outlaw motorcycle clubs as organizations whose members use their motorcycle clubs as conduits for criminal enterprises. Another key phrase you may hear in terms of outlaw MCs would also be one percenters. One percenters is said to refer to a comment made by the American Motorcyclist Association that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens, implying that the last 1% and therefore weren't law-abiding citizens were outlaws. This quote supposedly was a response to the Hollister riot of 1947. In 1947, an event had been held in Hollister, and to sum up what happened, some bikers at the event caused trouble. They raced bikes in the street, they got drunk, some people were injured, a lot of people went on to be arrested. And supposedly in response to this, the association would come out to say that these troublemakers didn't make up 99% of bikers and therefore were one percenters. But a lot of people took this and felt like they fit into that category, and so they made clubs away from the association and therefore became outlaws. On a quick side note though, the American Motorcyclist Association had came out to say that they performed in-depth investigations and determined that the comment couldn't be backed up by any of their records. So how do outlaw MCs work, and how do people become a member of one? Well, some outlaw clubs employ a process where members must pass several stages such as friend of the club, hang around and prospect on the way to becoming a fully patched member. Of course, this can vary from club to club though. Within the process of becoming a fully patched member, these lower ranked members would have to perform various tasks, which again does vary from club to club, sometimes even having to act out on violence in order to move up the ranks. And that's where today's story takes us, as we follow the story of several prospective members of outlaw MCs and their journey to potentially becoming fully patched members. In 2018, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club wanted to set up a new chapter in Surrey, but seeing as their rivals the Vikings Motorcycle Club had already established themselves there, it seemed as if this task was going to prove harder than what was set out. The only documented incident between the Hells Angels and the Vikings was actually around 6 months before this story takes place in May of 2018. Here, two Hells Angels bikers attacked a Vikings rival in Maidstone. They knocked him off his bike in broad daylight within the town centre, pinned him up to a wall, which was followed by repeated punches and kicks. It seems the main goal was an attempt to rip his jacket off and then rip his patches off, which in the outlaw world is a total sign of disrespect. But again, 6 months on from this attack, on the 1st of November 2018, Hells Angels prospective members, along with associate prospective members from the Red Devils Motorcycle Club, came up with a plan to try and persuade a Vikings associate motorcycle club, by the name of the Wargs Brotherhood to join alliances with them to give the Hells Angels a stronger hold in the region and therefore set up a new chapter. Ex-Vikings member Jimmy Kidd had switched sides to the Hells Angels 6 years prior in 2012 and was still on good terms with the Wargs, so he decided to take it upon himself to set up a meeting at Cobham Services. After this meeting though, it was clear that the Wargs wouldn't break ties with them, and so the Hells Angels and the Red Devils would soon turn to a more aggressive plan, for one, to show their loyalty to their clubs, but for two, to try and wipe out a threat so the Hells Angels could once again set up a new chapter in Surrey. 6 days after that meeting, the last minute plan was to be executed, and on the 7th of November 2018, 7 prospective members of the Hells Angels and the Red Devils, that being Jimmy Kidd, Bartosz Plezniak, Tamas Tomaszek, Wojciech Dziemiajewski, Ladislav Zlej, Przemysław Korkus, and David Jacobs, along with 6 other unknown members, attended the Hells Angels club in Slough before driving to South Godstone Station. A little after 7 PM, they left in 4 cars and headed for the sleepy village of Blindley Heath and parked up in St John's Meadow, which is just north of the Foreman Club and Institute. This was thought to have been a shared clubhouse between the Vikings and the Wargs Brotherhood. Next, the bikers leave their vehicles together and would be captured on CCTV that hasn't been released to the public, but the CCTV does pick the bikers up walking towards the social club. Around the same time, a meeting was going down at the clubhouse known as the Should between the Viking and Wargs members, and it's believed that around 7 were in attendance. 14-month-old member and in fact youngest member of the Vikings MC, 21-year-old Reese Hobbs, had left briefly to fetch a jacket from a car outside, but this action would make him the first target of the Hells Angels and the Red Devils. When leaving the clubhouse, his attention had been drawn to the road by the sound of someone kicking a stone, and as he looked down the road he saw 5 or 6 men. The men had been dressed in all black and either had balaclavas or face coverings, and every one of them was holding a weapon. Again, these were Hells Angels and Red Devils members. As he looked at the men, one of them charged towards him, and at first he thought he'd been knocked over but soon realised he'd been stabbed. He fell to the floor, and the bikers would go on to beat him around the head and arms. Somehow though, he manages to get up and staggers towards the clubhouse, but was quickly pursued, and as he got to the door, he was stabbed in the groin and collapsed through the door, and it was then Reese went into the corner of the room and his intestines were in fact hanging out. Once the bikers burst into the clubhouse, they unleashed an attack with knives, koshes, batons and industrial cable, going on to stab 5 more of the men and beating them in an attack which lasted, believe it or not, less than 90 seconds. But even though this lasted less than 90 seconds, witnesses who were near to the scene would phone emergency services and described it as a quote massacre. The result of the attack though, once rushed to hospital, showed that all men had been seriously injured. Most were stabbed in the arms, buttocks and calf, and they'd also suffered torn muscles and broken bones. For Reese Hobbs, he required a total of 25 staples to close up his wounds, whilst another member, David Clark, needed 25 stitches in his head, and he had also been stabbed in the thigh as well. Eventually though, all 7 men would go on to be arrested in connection with this incident and were charged with GBH with intent, violent disorder and possession of an offensive weapon, and all 7 would go on to deny the charges brought against them. The only court details we really get from this situation is of course the events which we've already gone over, but also all men gave different defences. For example, one of them said that they'd been in the area but they'd been drinking with a friend, whilst others completely denied being there. But although they had gave these defences, ANPR, phone data, CCTV and DNA evidence, along with again not great defences to be honest with you, would see all 7 men go on to be found guilty on all charges brought against them, but Jimmy Kidd was cleared of possession of a bladed article and possession of an offensive weapon. In October of 2019, all men would go on to be sentenced to 14 years in prison. And so today we've took a look into the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs. If you guys want me to continue with this series, give the video a thumbs up so it lets me know that you guys want to see more of these kind of videos. Of course, if this is something that you want to see, we will continue to look at situations that have happened here in the UK, but also if you guys want to see me cover maybe stuff that happens in America and stuff that happens in Australia, Europe, etc., because of course they have big biker cultures over there also, especially in America because that's where it was birthed, then again let me know in the comment section if that is something that that you guys want to see. But yeah, it's been your boy Ape Huncho, and I'm out. Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Ape Huncho, back at you again with another video. Now, this is the first episode of a new series I'm about to do. As I previously stated on my community tab, I said for 2020 I would like to start a new series. This series is going to consist of stories that have happened in the past, stories you might have not heard about, and some high profile cases where I feel like there's not been much coverage on a specific case, and it will paint a clearer timeline of events what happened surrounding the situation. This is the case of Latwan Griffiths, aka SA, splash addict from Harlem Spartans.
They hide, they hide, they hide. They hide, they hide. Step on your block, step on your block. Whopping squats, I eat that stain. Trap 24, don't care about the rain. Food is food, so I take my plate. Fuck with the ops, HS to the face. Free savage in the can, that's bro. Ops wanna talk, but I score, little man got napped on Brixton Road.
Oh, bad B come to the cave. But she didn't even know SA. No scratch. Send her to scratch. Cause you already know my face. Scam can't fit in the ride. 410 we crash. After A-gun boys, what happened when I got down ads? Aye.
Remember that girl that I called beautiful the other day, yeah? Actually, I'm trying to say I'm cuffed. Trying to say add my thing, that's one up, innit? Pretty girl, come my way. See my little mustache.
Before we take a look at the case, I just want to take this time out just to say rest in peace to Latwan Griffiths. My thoughts and condolences go out to anybody who's been affected by the situation. Latwan Griffiths, age 18, also known as SA, which is short for Splash Addict. He also went by the alias Lat, was part of the South London collective Harlem Spartans. For you guys that don't know, Harlem Spartans are a UK drill rap group, and SA had brought a few songs out, and he has a verse on Kenneton Where It Started. I'm unsure if this is the original version, a remix, or an unreleased version.
Harlem, no order. 3,000 Spartans pull up, gang. Man, see it up, get bored up. Wet with chest and back, fam. Jazz in the cut, that's slaughter. Ops want me, they ran, fam. A nigga like Nags with a quarter.
Although he had released a few songs, he was more known as a gang member rather than a rapper, and was allegedly one of the most active gang members in Harlem Spartans. On the 25th of July 2018, at around 6:45 PM, it was rumoured that Latwan Griffiths, aka SA, had gone to ride out on his rivals or opposition with a Moscow 17 member. It's also been rumoured that SA had asked Incognito from Moscow 17 to come on this ride out, but Incognito had declined. Incognito would then go on his Snapchat later saying, "When bro called me, I should have went, it's my fault." I can't currently find that Snapchat, but it has been reported that Incognito did in fact put this Snapchat out. It would only be a few days later, Incognito from Moscow 17 would also go on to sadly lose his life. When SA had seen his rivals, which is believed to be in the Loughborough Junction, more specifically the area of Elmore House in Minute Road, it was rumoured that SA's gun had jammed when trying to shoot at his rivals, and subsequently he was stabbed multiple times in the torso. Then SA and the alleged Moscow 17 member drove off where it's believed they were trying to get SA to King's College Hospital in Camberwell. They had got to Denmark Road in Camberwell when the CCTV footage here shows the driver of the moped leave SA at around 6:55 PM. It's believed that SA had lost consciousness at this point, as in the CCTV he's seen wobbling on the back of the moped, and then the footage shows the moped driver speed off. It's been rumoured that the moped driver had a firearm on him, and this was the reason why he had to leave SA, as he knows police would show up in a matter of minutes. Local community leader Abu Kamara, who is residence chairman of the Crawford estate, age 50, was stood by the side of the road when SA was pulled off the moped. He said, "Two boys come along towards Cold Harbour Lane on a moped. It was going fast, real fast, before they reached the outside of my flat. He stopped and just pulled him off the moped and said, 'Help him, he's been stabbed.' There were a lot of people around. There was a lady and a gentleman in the car who tried to stop the bleeding. I can't believe it, he just left him in the middle of the road. He obviously didn't want to get involved with the police and panicked." He added, "Everyone shouted, 'Why are you leaving him? Chase him.' They ran after him but he got away. He was a coward. If that kid had got to hospital, he'd have been saved." Mr. Kamara then went on to say, police cars took less than 5 minutes to arrive, while an ambulance arrived 10 minutes later after he was found. He said, "There was a lot of blood. He was stabbed twice in the side." He said, "People come out of their homes and started doing CPR on him. The police were magnificent. It's not a boy from around here. I've seen a lot of young boys asking who he was, worried it was their friend." Passers-by, including an off-duty nurse, tried to resuscitate SA at the scene. Paramedics were still trying to save him as he was stretchered into an ambulance 20 minutes later. One witness said, "The boy was hanging off the back of the scooter and the guy on the front was screaming, 'Hold on, hold on.' I said to my sister, 'That guy looks very ill.' He was all slumped over, hanging off. They were going quite slowly and both had helmets on. He fell off further up the road and loads of people ran out to try and help. It's so scary to hear that he died, and unfortunately, after being taken to hospital by paramedics, he was tragically pronounced dead at 12:22 AM the next morning. London Mayor Sadiq Khan took to Twitter to tweet out about the situation, saying, "I'm deeply saddened by the fatal stabbing of an 18-year-old in South London last night. Such senseless loss of life leaves families and communities devastated. At Met Police investigations continue, and I urge anyone with information to call 101 or contact at Crime Stoppers UK anonymously." Initially, a 17-year-old boy had been arrested in Kent on suspicion of murder, and he was taken to a South London police station where he had remained in custody. He was then released, but it's unknown if he was released on bail, under investigation, or no further action. Officers investigating then arrested 2 men on July 30th and were taken into custody at a South London police station. The first man was arrested on suspicion of murder, and the second in connection with the investigation, and they remained in custody. Again, they were released, but it's unknown if they were bailed, released under investigation, or had no further action. Officers had started to distribute leaflets around the area of Latwan's murder on Wednesday the 1st of August. In a statement released by police, Latwan's family said they wanted peace, adding that until people come forward, there is nothing stopping you from being the next victim of a knife or gun crime. It's also been rumoured that Harlem Spartans members Scratcher and GG had gone out to retaliate for S.A.'s death. They had been jailed after pleading guilty to firearms offences following a proactive surveillance operation by detectives from Specialist Crime. They were sentenced on Tuesday the 1st of October 2019 at Inner London Crown Court. Samson Oleinka, aka Scratcher, aged 22, born 11th of the 5th 97 of Falmouth Road, SE1, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for possessing a firearm with intent to enable another to endanger life. Kluiver Atofra, aka GG, 19, born 17th of the 10th 99 of Kennington Park Road, SE11, was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months for possession of firearms, offensive weapons, and bladed articles. At 10:40 PM on the 5th of November 2018, Trident detectives, supported by colleagues from the Specialist Firearms Command, SCO-19, attempted to stop 2 people on a moped on Bowling Green Street, SE11. The moped failed to stop for police and was pursued into Montfort Place. The suspects attempted to evade capture by driving through bollards. Their attempt proved unsuccessful, and they crashed. Firearms officers detained GG by the moped. He was found to be wearing body armor, and 2 knives were found on the ground next to him. Officers continued to pursue Scratcher, who was the pillion passenger, which means the person who was riding on the back. During the foot chase, they heard gunshots. An armed officer subsequently fired his weapon. Scratcher was detained in Montfort Place, and he was also found to be wearing body armor, and there were no reported injuries. During a search of a building site directly where he was detained, officers found a sawn-off shotgun with 2 spent cartridges. It was later established that the weapon had been discharged as Scratcher discarded it, which caused the pursuing police officers to fear for their safety. They were both arrested and taken to South London police stations, and they were charged on the 7th of November 2018. Detective Chief Inspector James Harper said, "These 2 men were carrying weapons including a shotgun. There is no telling what they would have done with them if confronted by a rival. We remain committed to taking guns and knives off our streets, and arresting those who pose a threat to the safety of Londoners is our priority." The Met's firearms officers are highly trained, and it's very rare that they discharge their weapons. That night, they genuinely feared for their lives. Now, it's only been rumoured that Scratcher and GG were going out to avenge S.A.'s death, and it's pretty crazy to think, right, that police genuinely feared for their life on that night. To think, as a firearms officer, that you're fearing for your life is absolutely baffling to me. But that's the story of S.A. Now, I just want to take this time out again just to say rest in peace to Latwan Griffiths, aka S.A. My thoughts and condolences go out to anybody who's been affected by the situation. Now, to my best knowledge, I'm pretty sure no one has currently been charged with the murder of S.A., and it's just crazy to think that in 2020, this July will be the 2-year anniversary, and the fact that still no one has been charged with the murder is really unfortunate, to be honest, and I bet his family is still hurting, and they just want his killer to be brought to justice. And my thoughts are with his family at this current time. That was the first episode of this new series. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. I will be releasing more content like this. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. If you want the latest drill, music, street news out of the UK, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Spinny boy at Huncho.